Welcome again to our November Fireside Chat. If you're just joining us now, we're talking about the value of personal leadership in growing your personal and professional career. And I have two amazing guests, Dr. Amina Chitembo, who is the CEO and founding director of Migrant Leadership Institute. And we also have Mr. Curtis Lloyd, very popularly known as just Curtis Lloyd in Zambia and abroad. And he's the CEO of Possibility Practitioners. We had a minute to introduce Dr. Amina Chitembo, but Amina, for just the sake of revamping our conversation again, just tell us about who you are and what you do in the space of leadership. And then Curtis will also let us know just a little bit about who he is so we can bring our conversation up to speed with everyone who's joining us. So, Amina, sorry to repeat yourself, but go ahead and reintroduce yourself.
That's absolutely fine, Mercy. Welcome again, once again, everyone. So, Mercy, thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this conversation. It is a topic that is dear to my heart, so I'm really honored to be here. So, my name is Amina Chitembo, and I was born in Zambia. I am Zambian, but I live in the UK. I've been in the UK since 2001. And as I mentioned before, I am a mother of four, and I'm also have done a lot of things, but I'm going to focus on a couple of things that I'm doing currently. So I have a PhD in leadership and organizational studies. I work in the health service in culture transformation, and I help people with understanding some of the cultural issues around equality, diversity, and inclusion, which is a big piece here in the UK. Then I also run an organization which was launched 2 years ago, Migrants Leadership Institute. Within Migrants Leadership Institute, we do quite a lot of things, but the one thing that I can focus on is around coaching people that are coming from other countries to come and work in what they call the Western countries, so to say, mainly the UK, Germany, and Switzerland, and also the US. And what we do is we provide that career connection so that people can understand the space that they occupy, because sometimes you can think you are in a space where you can't make changes for yourself, but we help them to do that. I'm also a lecturer at university, De Montfort University. I teach leadership and human resources management to master's long distance students.
Awesome. Thank you, Amina. Curtis, introduce yourself to our audience, what you do, and what experience you're bringing to our conversation here today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Messi. Happy to be here today. I think we've been looking forward to this day. It was a long wait. Excited that we are actually here now today. Well, basically, in the context of our conversation today, I am CEO and founder of an organization called Possibility Practitioners. And basically what we do, just to give perspective of, first of all, why Possibility Practitioners, I love telling this story that at some point I got to see that with the way the world is stratified, where you get to find, for some reason, being in the same global space, there's a sense in which certain sectors of our global village are so advanced, and yet other sectors seem to be dragging. And then the question is, why? What is wrong with this particular kind? And one of the things that got to happen in my space was probably to get to discover that those that have gone ahead of us probably possibility practitioners. They just believe that it can be done, and they became daring. And so that is why we call ourselves possibility practitioners. So we now contextualize it to say, look, can we also start and believe that it can be done? And so in our context, possibility does not extend to likelihood, but it zeroes into the fact that we insist on something that should be done and that it should happen. And that is the context from which we draw our name. So basically, we are a consultancy firm, but we are also broad-based. We do mentorship, especially for young people. Our flagship event, of course, being dubbed the Possibility Symposium, where we mentor people in leadership, public speaking, entrepreneurship, and many, many other things, just to see what we get to do into changing our society to the kind of world we want to see. More so, basically, I'm a former banker, so today I'm able to say that I'm a former banker. I've been in the banking space for 18 uninterrupted years. I love putting uninterrupted until I left last year to just focus.
Amazing.
So
I like the qualification of uninterrupted. Well, welcome to both of you. We have so much information to delve in today. And I was sharing with Amina in our audience earlier that one of the things that I get asked a lot is, Mercy, you've advanced in your leadership and the positions that you hold and all of these things. What has made you successful in terms of becoming a leader and pursuing leadership positions and all of those things? And when you guys and I were having this conversation in our planning phases, we were talking about the value of personal leadership, because you cannot be a leader out there when you don't know how to lead yourself to start with. So what does personal leadership actually mean to you, and how do people develop those skills of personal leadership that they can now translate into their professional and personal careers? We can start with Amina.
Thank you so much, Mercy. I think for me, personal leadership is around being aware of yourself. It's having that a resilience that you can bring to anything that you try to do. So when we talk about personal leadership, when we talk about leadership generally, sometimes people have a picture of somebody else that is sitting up there with the boss or in an organization, but we forget that leadership starts with us, because you can't lead other people if you can't lead yourself. And that has to do with, so personal leadership is having that prowess yourself in terms of seeing yourself and disciplining yourself and being able to lead yourself so that you can know what your values are, what do you stand for, what are you, how self-disciplined are you when you talk about what you're doing. So for me, that's where personal leadership comes in.
Curtis, what can you add to that conversation? What does personal leadership mean to you?
Well, from the same with what Dr. Amina has actually shared. Basically, it's about really knowing who you are and just taking charge of what can cause you to achieve the things that you want to achieve. One of the biggest challenges that we get to have, actually, before we contextualize it in getting to see who follows you, the question is, are you able to manage to follow yourself? So you have an inner view of who you are, and then test how challenging it is to lead yourself. And so obviously you'd be guided by values. There's a value system that you would have, and everything about yourself must align to those values. Now, the question is, are you able to lead yourself before we talk about you leading others? So personal leadership is the consciousness of that very aspect.
So I like the aspect of leading yourself. Like, would you follow yourself? If you were a leader, would you actually follow yourself? And I think that in today's society of social media and followers and all of these things, I think it's very enticing to just wrap up or be able to say I have 250,000 followers or 2 million followers, but what exactly are they following, and what is the vision and what is the insight that you bring to their lives, and so on and so forth. But in terms of values, what do you guys think are important values to possess as you are beginning to develop your personal leadership skills? What are some of those things that people need to be aware of?
Okay. I think for me, Mercy and Curtis, it's around understanding what drives you. Why are you doing what you're doing? So whatever it is, and once again, it's personal leadership. So there's no wrong or right way of leading yourself. It's basically being authentic with who you are. So once you're self-aware, you know that your understanding of your strengths, your weaknesses, things that are important to you, and things that are important. That what do you want to give to the world? If you were not here tomorrow, what would people say about you? Those are the, that's really, really important as a key thing. The second one for me is self-discipline. There's so many, as you mentioned, Mercy, we live in a world where there is social media, there's so many influencers, there's so many people doing certain things. And I like to call it the shiny object syndrome. So you see a shiny thing, you run to it. You see another shiny thing, you run to it. It's about reining yourself in and being able to be self-disciplined to stay on course with whatever it is that you want to do. Set some goals for yourself. They can be really big goals, but also be aware that it's easier to get disappointed when you set yourself massive goals. So get the smaller goals as well. You can have a long-term goal, medium-term goal, and then the small short-term goals. The last thing I'm gonna go on here is around emotional intelligence.
Yes.
Being able to know when you need what is within your locus of control. And if you will have setbacks, you will have people, especially in the world where we live, with people who love us, you say, oh, I'm going to do this. And then somebody comes and say, are you sure? Are you sure? People are just going to be laughing at you. You should be able to bounce back from anything that happens that brings you back to your self-awareness. So
absolutely, yes. Curtis, what say you about personal values when it comes to personal leadership?
Thank you so much. First of all, just in the context, to bring it rather to context, for the sake of the many viewers that I know are watching this and many others that will watch this, later on, it should be noted that by default, we get influenced by values and values in the context of really what ranks highly in our value hierarchies. So, as a leader, you have to be conscious of what is regulating you, because whatever actions you take today are basically creating the kind of future that you will land into. So as a leader, the question you ask yourself is, the things right now, what kind of future are they creating? And then would I be happy to land into that future myself? And then by default, we get to know that the things that actually rank highly in our value system get to influence almost 100% of our behavior. We get to tilt towards those things. And I think it's been coined that the brain by default is designed to cause us to fulfill those things that rank highly in our value system. So for me, basically, it's an issue of, are you trying to create a world that you yourself would be happy to live in? Or suppose everybody else was to be like you, which is impossible, but if everybody else was to be like you, would you be happy to be led by a person like you? Are you happy with the kind of leader that you are, that assuming you sat under yourself, would you be happy to be led by your kind of a leader? So when you do the introspection, when you do the examination of that kind of a person that you are, I think it will tilt you towards becoming a kind of leader that is conscious of the kind of environment that we are creating. Because ultimately, after we have led ourselves, it matters that we get to see the kind of influence we have on those that are going to be led by us.
Absolutely. And, one of the things that is so important to this discussion is a lot of the time people say, well, all of this sounds great, but what are practical ways that I can actually develop my leadership skills in order to start being the type of leader that I would want to be led by, and creating this world, as you say, Curtis, this world that I would want to live in the future? Because whatever we're doing today, we're contributing to what's going to happen in the future. So what type of practical advice do you have for people in terms of developing their personal leadership skills?
I would start, first of all, by mentioning that, interestingly, whatever we do at an individual basis is contributing to the bigger picture of what our society will look like. I love telling people that, for example, in the context of money, there are people that would want to feel that, well, I don't want to have a lot of money, because if I have so much of it, it might move me away from the kind of person that I want. So let me just have enough to cause me not to deviate from the kind of person I am. But I tell them that, look, as you look at it that way, trust me, money will go into any hands. And as we know, money is a voice. So if you don't have it, somebody else will have it. So the one that will have it will dictate, and they'll have a louder voice into the kind of society that we are. Same with leadership. So as a person, first of all, you ask yourself, if I'm not contributing to this or to shaping our society, then who is contributing? Do I have control? And so it's a competition of which voice would loudest. So our being quiet when we could probably create a better world would mean that somebody else who is trying to destroy our future is contributing into destroying our future. So the step that you ought to define is really what are your strategic growth plans? So you cannot lead yourself, you cannot lead people if you choose not to grow. I didn't even mention I'm John C. Maxwell certified trainer, speaker. So I'm about to quote him rather. So I had to qualify that. He says that the only guarantee that tomorrow will get better is our continuous growth. So the first step that you have to put in motion is to be practical about your intentions to grow. Growth ought to be intentional. So one of the things that you put in motion is to be deliberate about you becoming better than you were today, because challenges keep evolving. We can use yesterday's solutions for today's problems. We get stuck along the way. So we ought to improve, we ought to develop, we ought to grow. Like we heard in the earlier introduction that Dr. Amina was sharing, that we could pick that she is on a continuous growth trajectory, because obviously our world is dynamic. We keep facing new challenges. So the first step for me, I think, borders on growth. One ought to be deliberate. It said on occasion without number, and we quote it over and over again, that change is the only constant. Like change happens automatically, but growth in the context of you becoming a better version of yourself ought to be intentional. So that is the starting point. You cannot take people where you've never been yourself. You ought to grow yourself to grow others.
Dr. Amina.
I'm
enjoying this discussion.
That is music to my ears. So I'm going to take it back to sort of like really, really the basics. You know, just Curtis mentioned money. Money is a very divisive thing, but also it's something that everybody, it rules the world, basically. So if I quote one of my mentors as well, Brendan Bouchard, who taught us that those of us who've got values of service, right? When you work, I think we're here on a Saturday doing this. It's evening for me and Curtis. It's early morning for you, Mercy, and you just told me that you are with family, Thanksgiving. We've given up all that to come and talk to our colleagues here from all over the world. It's because we want to give back, we want to share. And you can only do that. One thing that I carry and I say to people, and I relate again to what Brendan told us, is you cannot sustain the mission when you're broke.
Exactly.
So you can choose and say, well, I want to be a servant leader and I want to lead from behind, but there will be somebody that wants to hear from you. There will be somebody that wants to learn from you. And the first and foremost, you have to be able to invest in yourself. Invest in yourself professionally, invest in yourself socially, invest in, social capital, professional capital. We are in this world. It is unfortunately counter to some of the values that some of us grew up with. It is a world where you sell yourself. It is a world that you talk to yourself. We never get told this at school, but what's the first thing you do if you're going to get a job? It's going for an interview. Why are you going for an interview? You might have all the qualifications in the world, but you're going for that interview because you want to show those people who you are if they employ you in their organization, or if it's getting funding for whatever business or whatever it is. Your investors need to be assured that you can actually lead their project and use their money properly. So money is an important thing, whether or not you use it as in, buying bling or whatever it is, or you can choose to use it for good. But whichever way, that those that speak the loudest, unfortunately, would be the ones that are heard. So I think in adding your voice to the world, in your professional growth, where you start from is start small, start where you are. There's no, some people are lucky, they've just gone on and started and they're everywhere, they're teaching everywhere. But you can start with your own community. So as an example for me, when I came to the UK in 2001, the area I moved from London and moved it to on the coastal region, which is Worthing, West Sussex, which it's a seaside town where every time I saw a Black person, I said hi because there were so few of us. And then there was so much that was happening in terms of, some discrimination, not just understanding how things went. And I set up a charity. I set up a charity not knowing exactly what I was going to do. I came from working in Zambia AIDS-related tuberculosis projects and having a banking experience to starting a whole nonprofit to support other people, to work with other people, to help shape the policy. I started very small, and you start from there. And I did that for 10 years. So you can start from wherever you are, whether it's within a team where you are, a small group in your university, or wherever you are. You start making those small changes as a leader. Be a change maker. And I think that's another one that is important in terms of becoming a personal leader, leading yourself.
So I love, look, I'm taking notes over here and I'm learning too. And this is what I love about these conversations for me, because I'm also learning as my audience is learning, and I'm taking notes. So you see me look down, I'm like, yep, emotional intelligence, authenticity, and all of that. And so it's so important in today's world, especially as young professionals, as you begin to set yourself up for career growth and all of these things. What do you guys think in terms of mentoring? Because I think just like any other area of our lives, leadership, because both of you did talk about your mentors and quoted your mentors. So how do you identify mentors in your leadership growth and capacity? And how do you select those people to make sure that they're leading you in the right direction based on where you're trying to go?
Right. I think I can go first on that
Thank
one.
you.
Right. Okay. Let's go.
Go ahead, Amina.
All right.
Please go ahead, Dr. Amina.
So what I was trying to say around mentorship. So this is a question that I get asked a lot, and especially those of us that do consultancy, we do mentoring, we do coaching, even do therapy. So how do those separate? Which one are we talking about in the space? So for me, I really look at mentoring as you being able to pick somebody that is in the field of where you want to be. It doesn't have to be within your organization. It doesn't have to be within you. It's somebody you look up to. It's somebody, so you see somebody and you say, I really want to learn to do what that person does. How did they get there? And they're higher than you. You can go and learn from them. With mentors, sometimes it's around values. We talked earlier around values. I think I personally go for mentors who align with my values. So I know service, I know determination, and I look at people that have started, and personal story is very important. So I hear people's personal stories and I say, yeah, I think I can follow that one. Now, being aware that not everybody will agree to mentor you, it's around being able to be open. You can have a mentor for a specific thing. So you can, most people coaching, you will pay for the coach to be able to coach you because you want them to coach you in one direction or in something that you want to build. Whereas with mentorship, it's around somebody that has experience. And some mentors will charge you as well to be able to do that, but they will give you more added value in terms of their lived experience of whatever it is that you want to do. So in times when I've mentored young people, I think both you and I, Mercy, are very much on social media. I haven't been for the last couple of years or so. When my thesis got so hard, I was like, no, I'll and just get on with it. But it's around being there. I always say, if one person can learn something from me, then that's my that's my job done. But most of the times, my inbox is always buzzing because somebody has seen me from somewhere and say, "Oh, heard you talk about that," and that's how I have also found my mentors going forward. It's about what people say. It's about what's there. It's about what I know about them. So for me, that's what works.
Curtis, your additions to the mentorship piece.
Thank you. And again, I have to mention something because of what I'm about to say. I'm an author. I've written about one book.
I love that. You and me have written one book.
Yeah. So the book that I've written is titled Take Me to Kaunda. And in the book, I get to tell a story of how that I want to be taken to this person. Of course, I use KK figuratively, but I was saying, take me to this man who has been where I intend to go. I love telling this story that what mentorship plays in an individual's is typified in the life of a medical practitioner, for example. If I have a challenge that speaks into probably an ailment, maybe I have a headache, I don't need to go to medical school to sit for 7 years for me to know what the solution to that headache is. I just need to go to that person who's gone to medical school for my sake, so that I spend less than to deal with what I'm supposed to deal in. I think it's also localized in many contexts to say it's riding on the shoulders of giants. Trust me, we don't have it to keep, starting over and over again. Like people want to be what we call trailblazers. Is it trailblazer? Trailblazers, wanting to be the one that may have pioneered something. We don't have the luxury of that. Sometimes we ought to take advantage of those people that have gone ahead of us. They tell you that, look, if you go fast on this terrain, there are potholes ahead. There's a cave, this road cave. You've never been there. So essentially, mentors come in and speak into helping you navigate through the challenges of life because they've been there before. And like I'm shared, you get now to qualify who helps you to get to where you are going by first of all defining where you yourself are going, because the argument many is, first of all, they don't even know where they want to go, and then they look for anybody else to mentor them. So the question is, where are they taking you? You define where you are going. You will know who is supposed to hold your hand to help you get there. Like if I'm going, if I want to travel to Alaska right now, I don't know what the weather is, but on average, it's freezing. In Lusaka currently, it's hot. It's hot. So I will not pack my luggage with the clothes that speak into the weather in Lusaka right now. I'll pack my luggage, the clothes that speak into the weather of where I'm actually landing into. So that tells the story of how mentorship plays a role in like the selection process, because you'd have defined where you are going. So you will know exactly who that person is, because with this person, actually, I'll safely land in that place where I'm actually going.
Amazing. So for our viewers, for our audience here today, I just want to remind you, if you have specific questions for our presenters, our speakers, please put that in the chat. I'm monitoring the chat and I'll be able to ask those questions on your behalf. But I'm definitely enjoying this and I hope that you're learning as much as I'm learning. So continuing the conversation, like leadership is not something that happens haphazardly, right? You guys have had so much training in leadership development, coaching, and mentoring, but there are certain, it's like it's an art and a science. So tell us about the art and the science of leadership in terms of just overall frameworks that people, or theories that you know of, in terms of what can people use to actually guide their leadership development, and what is the science behind the leadership growth and development as well. Amina?
Sorry, I wanted to be sure that I can go first.
You can go first.
This is so interesting. Sorry, Mercy, but I'm just going to take us back to our previous.
Go ahead, take us back wherever you want us to go.
just a thought around
Yeah.
mentorship and mentors, right?
Yes.
So we live in a very strange world, and
Yes.
would like to think we are all happily moving in the same direction. Everybody is happy for you. And I think being on social media, you will see that there are a lot of memes, quotes, this and that around, who's looking out for you. And
Yes.
there are several authors that say you are only as good as the 5 people you hang around with, right?
Exactly.
So if you have a growth mindset, it is very important to not just look up to mentors who are above you, but also to look at your circle of friends. And
Exactly.
sometimes some circles of friends will stop us from going where we want to go. And that's unfortunately a real life experience. So it's about you being able to, that self-awareness that you want will tell you if you're in the right place or not. You can't be wanting to go forward when you are always hanging around with people that will pull you away every Friday night, every Saturday night, let's go out.
Yeah.
When actually you have Monday to Friday when you're either in school or you're working. Saturday is the time that you can put in that little extra for yourself. So it's very important to understand that as you grow yourself, you know your limits, you know your boundaries, and be very clear around those boundaries, because I think sometimes it can be really difficult to say no to certain things, but it's okay. I would rather say no to doing something that is not going to help me grow than say yes and then regret not having to do something that's I really needed to do. So
I love that.
your level as well can be a good mentorship space. So we don't see mentorship just as above and below. It's also your colleagues around you. So that's just something I wanted to add on that one. Then the next one was in terms of frameworks. So in leadership, there are a lot of frameworks, and I can go the whole day talking about this. And I was told that this is a bit academic, professional, mixed audience. So for me, in terms of my type of leadership that I look at and the framework that I go on is around situational leadership. That's very important. So situational leadership is where, it's very much based on the readiness and the maturity of either your followers or the space that you're occupying. At any given time, we have a space that we are occupying, whether that's physical space or mental space or just any other space, using the term loosely. Understanding that the situation will demand for you to be adaptable to that situation. So adaptable leadership is another one that I go for, is for you to be able to thrive, you have to be quick. You have to be quick to be able to change if you need to. You have to be quick to step back sometimes and think through things, because sometimes you can be going at 110 miles an hour when actually the situation requires you to be back to 75 and just read the room, read the space where you're in, and change course if you have to, because sometimes not everything. I think reaching to where I am with 4 children. I just celebrated my very big birthday this year, half a century. I have learned a lot. I have made a lot of mistakes, but I've also had a lot of seminars. Those mistakes, they are seminars because they take you to a certain place. You learn from them. You brush yourself off. I always say, cry for 2 minutes and then brush yourself off and say, what next? Where do I need to go? And in leadership, whereas we can talk about the transformational leader, this leader, that leader,
right?
A lot of the frameworks can be used interchangeably as long as you are able to be situational, you're able to be adaptive. You can work around that. So I think for me, that's one area that I would sort of like mainly focus on for now. Thank you.
Awesome. And before Curtis jumps in on leadership theories and frameworks, Moses in the chat says, "Happy birthday, Dr. Amina."
Oh.
That's
you.
Amazing.
I found myself on Mweban to lead you on my birthday. I don't know who put that on there, but thank you.
Amazing, amazing. Curtis, leadership frameworks and theories that people can have an idea about and how they can use them to grow their leadership.
Thank you. And like Dr. Amina has mentioned, there are quite several frameworks out there. One of the things that John Maxwell says, and I love it, he says leadership is influence. And, there's a sense when conversations around leadership are being held, a lot of people default into trusting that it is not them that we are talking about. So they have this other mind as the conversation is going on. So they feel like, leadership, or probably they're talking about this kind of person, because in their world, they feel probably they are not leaders. But we ought to realize that each and every one of us actually is a leader, because we have that one person that we get to influence. And one person is so huge, and one person is a crowd, because we don't know how far they can go with whatever they get to tap into from whatever you are influencing them into. I know Dr. Amina has touched on situational leadership. I want to tilt a bit to transformational. Because I think she's a foundation around, being agile, adapting to the environment, trying to, deal with things as they come, because that is the heart of a situational leadership. Like, you don't get stuck because of the dynamicism of life. Like, something has just come and it throws you off. You are ready, like, anytime. You are able to take charge of that particular situation. Transformational leadership, obviously, was speaking to you trying to change lives. One of the things that I get to see, and I think we've seen it, especially now in our social media space, is there's a sense in which young people especially get so packed up with information. So they run so much with information, and yet there's little change on them. And this is where now people get to, I think we have a lot of people that are talking and they're not showing the results. And so I get to the fact that we ought to find ourselves in a space where we see lives being changed, we see lives being transformed. And I think there's a chain of people that have demonstrated that. I love telling the story of Nelson Mandela, for example, who just used his personality to influence change in a community that he was on. So he used that to influence many other lives in a very, very volatile South Africa back then. And so he chose that. We've got Mahatma Gandhi, who also did the same, and I'm proud to say Kaunda adopted the same at the root of nonviolence. And by doing so, he was influencing, in a volatile space, in a transformation. So volatile, as it were, he transformed ideologies by just the way that he lived, how he conducted himself, how he communicated. And so even from my perspective, I think it becomes critical that we begin to think, how am I influencing my world? How are they responding to it? Am I transforming lives? Because the essence of it all is to create a certain kind of life that we want to see in those that we are influencing.
I love that. And you know what? I have to put it in this context as well, in terms of information is power, but what you do with that information to actually create impact and relevance in the world that you are, and in the different spheres of influence that you're hanging out in, is so important. Because what good is it to just have information if you're not able to impact lives and improve lives in your day-to-day operations? And so we have a couple of questions before we dive into more of our conversations. We have a couple of questions from the audience, and the first one is for Sir Curtis. It says, what parameters should someone consider in differentiating themselves in terms of being a leader, a mentor, or a coach?
So I think there's the basic way I could distinguish it is just taking up the aspect of football, for example. A football coach may have never played football, but they will dig into abilities to make sure that you play football. So they throw it back at you, challenging you what you already have in order for you to score the goals that you're supposed to go. So that is what a coach will come to do with you. A mentor basically comes in as an expert who has traveled the path that you've been into. That's why you get to discover that in football, we call them coaches. And when we call them mentors, probably we've brought them in having had the experience of what they are trying to help the younger generation to do. So the distinction comes in that one just draws. In fact, when for example, you're going into a coaching session, for example, coaches would usually prompt you to draw solutions from yourself. So they'll bounce back at you so that you can actually discover that actually all along you already had this potential within you to deal with that particular situation that you are in. Mentors, on the other hand, will tell you, look, I've been on this path, so I will help you navigate through to get to where you are trying to go. Leadership, from the perspective of the many aspects that we've already touched on, basically out zeroing to say it's influence. There's always somebody that is looking up to you. I think it's being in the consciousness of saying, look, at this point, I'm no longer an isolated human being. I've got hundreds and thousands and many people, or even just one person that looks up to me. Exactly. So I now focus on dealing with those things that will cause positive change in people that actually look at.
Amazing. And Amina, I know that you also do this for a living. So what additions do you have in terms of those distinguishing factors of a coach, a mentor, a sponsor, a leader, before I ask you the question that was specifically directed to you?
All right. Thank you, Mercy. It's a very interesting question, actually. Very good questions, whoever's asked it. I think, as Curtis has said, coaching is around somebody that's going to throw it back at you. So it's about getting from where you are to where you want to go much faster than you would if you were to do it on your own. It's around dealing with all those self-limiting beliefs, which we all have. You think, am I good enough? Can I do this? Can I do that? And then that coach is there. They don't have to be an expert in your area of work, but they will take you to where you want to go. And how mostly they'll do that is by asking you questions, really challenging questions. And when I'm coaching people, I ask questions where sometimes tears come, and I'll say, well, I think if you didn't want that, you'd probably go and ask your friend. You probably go and ask an auntie, but you want somebody. You brought me in your space to challenge you beyond what you see yourself to be. So the power is in with you, but I'm here to challenge you to move you forward. When it comes to coaching, this is where mentoring. When it comes to mentoring, it's around somebody that has walked the journey, right? Now, I don't know whether, I haven't heard it much in other countries, but here in the UK, some of the things that we do is something called reverse mentoring. So this is where, for me, mentoring, in the sense of it, can be anyone that has lived the journey or can be where you want to go. So it can be up, it can be down, it can be whatever. So in organizations, we have what is called reverse mentoring. What does that mean? So I live in the UK, population of what I'd call ethnic minorities or people that are not white British is way smaller than the population of British people, obviously. But when you go into organizations, you will find that when you look at the top of the organization, many of the executives are white. And so if I take it back to my level as a Black woman, who was not born in this country, and I want to get to where those people are, it can be a really challenging journey because A, I don't understand the politics, B, I don't understand, they don't understand me. And so I give them the opportunity to be reverse mentored by me so that they can humanize me and understand who I am, such that they can then, if we bring in the term that we haven't used so far, be a sponsor to me where I want to go.
Exactly.
So that also happens, and that's where sort of like, if you deconstruct, from my point of view, if you deconstruct the mentoring a little bit, you can look for mentors for where you want to go, but also it's about helping people understand you. So this is where it goes back again to you sell yourself, so that you are reverse mentoring your mentor if you need to. So they can speak for you in certain places where maybe you wouldn't go. They can take you into meetings. You sit with them in meetings, so you understand how it works. Leadership is around, as we've said, it's around you and how you influence others. It's around you and how you deal with situations. It's around you and how adaptable you are. You can tend that to other people, because once you are able to lead yourself in that way, you are able to lead others as well on that path.
Amazing, amazing. So many questions. I'll try to get to the next one. The next one says, a lot of people talk about you have to have some substance before you start talking about, influencing people and all of that. How can you strike that balance in terms of cultivating your influence as a person who's still growing your leadership capacity and potential, but don't really have the background of what other people have to show for it? How do you strike that balance?
Right. That's a very interesting question. And I'm trying to remember.
Quickly on that one. Oh,
I think Curtis is
Go ahead.
a bit behind in terms
yes.
In terms
Go
of
ahead.
transmission.
Yeah. Curtis, go ahead and say something. And then we'll give Amina a chance.
Okay, perfectly. Yeah, so basically, I think Dr. Amina touched on, self-limiting beliefs. There are a lot of people that actually are so crowded with how much they don't know. So they know something, but in their world, they begin to think, do I know enough? So the question is, what do you mean, do you know enough? Like, what yardstick do you use to know that what you know is not enough? And it's those beliefs that cause people not to stand out and all that. What I get to tell people is be bold with what you know. And this is what has caused people to conquer nations. From if we go to many years ago, and how that these different nations were conquering other nations and all that, it's because a minority group felt that they can easily conquer another nation, and before we knew it, certain countries got colonized.
Exactly.
So the issue wasn't that they could for themselves. The issue was that the others believed so much in that they knew. So don't ever crowd yourself with how much you don't know, because the spectrum of how much we don't know is almost infinite. No matter how much we sit, we don't have the luxury of knowing everything there is in this world.
Exactly.
However, there's a place now that comes in, because there's a place now where you come to speak as an authority, which is a different conversation altogether, because this is where but he said, I'm certified to do this. It's the ethos part of why we are saying what we are saying. At that point, you say, I'm certified to say this. However, you also use the ethos of your experiences. For example, you could be in a space where there could have been a drought and there was so much diseases as a result of that, or people got stuck and all that. In as much as you've never gone to school to study climate change, you would have been a victim, or you would have been affected by a natural phenomenon that causes you to be an expert, to have a voice on that particular subject. So there's no really limiting line to say, okay, first you can only say something when you've known this. You can be bold about the little that you know and still go out there. Because remember, with the little that you know, there's somebody that knows less than you know. So you can still be influenced to those that are in that category. So I think from my end, that is my perspective rather, so that we can also cure the aspect of, limiting beliefs, that there can never be an end point or a start point to say, okay, now at this point, you can speak. Because what life have taught you many in your journey. You would have met people, you would have been influenced by school, you would have been pointed, you'd have had brilliant moments, you'd have had all these interactions which are just specific to you, which you can still use as a platform for your leadership journey. I think that is my take on that one.
Awesome. Amina, go ahead and chime in. I have one last question that I want us to get to. I know we're over 12, but there's an interesting question that I want us to get to before we close. But Amina, I'll give you an opportunity to respond to that last question that we had, balancing how much you know, the influence you have, and when to speak up kind of thing.
Right. I'll just go very I'll try and make it very quick and just quote some people. So Zig Ziglar, you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great.
Absolutely.
I always ask people that I'm working with to say, but how do I start? Who am I? You know, can I share this? That self-limiting belief that we've just talked about. The question is, as you said, Curtis, is whatever you know, and the power of the personal story is just so important, because wherever you are, you had a journey that you went through that has got you to where you are. That's a good point to start from. The second thing is, where we are in this audience that we have, it's there are people that have gone to school. You have learned something.
Yes.
We may have been in the same class, but I heard things differently from how you could interpret them because of your personal story, because of your background, because of where you were. So, for instance, in terms of, in my case, really focusing in on what I call highly skilled migrants. And so people that are recruited from other countries to come and work in the UK or Germany or wherever, they are coming in as big professionals. They are very much wanted to come here because they have the qualification. When you get to this country, you might sometimes feel like you know nothing. But it's about digging into yourself, that self-awareness that actually I am a professional in this space. This is where I am, and I want to influence change in this way. The other thing that I know is that I think I can't remember exactly who said that, but it's around your silence when something is happening that you need to change and you don't say anything. That's you being complicit in not helping to change that. So I think as a leader, it's around being comfortable to be uncomfortable sometimes.
Yeah.
And I'll stop
Awesome.
there.
Well, last question. I know we haven't gotten into all the questions from our audience today, but I want to address this one because I think it's really, really important. And the question is, as you are growing as a leader and developing your personal leadership capacity, you run into difficult people. How do you deal with difficult people as an emerging leader?
Wow. Did you want me to go first on that one, Mercy?
Correct. Go ahead. Go first.
Leadership will challenge you. And I know we've talked about all the great things that we can do to go forward, all the great things that we can do but you will always, always find challenges. And you will always find people that are not happy for you being in the space that you're occupying. You also find people that will try to minimize your voice.
Yeah.
So the number of times, I can tell you the number of times I've said something and then somebody sends me a message and said, oh, I could have said that as well. And my response is, why didn't you? Or why don't you just go ahead and do it as well? So we will have difficult situations. I've had really, really difficult situations sometimes because the work that I do has a lot to do with challenging. I was actually joking with my daughter the other day. I was like, oh, sometimes when I'm making comments on something, I'm thinking, okay, that's me. That's my job gone. Okay, that's me. That's the world stops talking to me now. But you have to have that self-belief. And you will experience difficult situations. And unfortunately, there's no list that says these are the kind of difficult situations you're going to face. And that's where that adaptive leadership and that situational leadership comes in. There are times as a leader where you lead from behind because people are going and you're empowering people and they're going forward. There are times in times of challenges, like we've just had the big pandemic, where somebody has to take charge and pull people forward. And sometimes people may not see what your vision is. But if you see, you know, I'm lucky enough to say, I don't know what it is, but I do see good in people as they go forward. So you can come to me and say, oh, you know, but I can't do this. And I've already seen that you've got the passion. You can go to do what you want to do. So it's around being able to pull people and say, you can do this. But with that comes the challenge of where does it go from you helping that person or that person coming back and say, you're bullying me or you're pushing me or you know, so it is really a balance that you have to strike. But all I can say is believe in yourself, be adaptable. And sometimes, as they say, when we're growing up, they used to say, sometimes you have to so you have to learn by mistakes. So if you're trying to take people to a place and they don't want to go there because they're being difficult, leave them, get some popcorn, sit and watch them burn out. So I'm gonna end there. Thank you.
Absolutely. Curtis, what advice do you have for someone who's trying to grow in their leadership position, in their leadership potential, but they're dealing with difficult people? How do you deal with that?
Thank you. So it's both complex in terms of trying to say, okay, this is the solution to dealing with difficult people, because difficult people are difficult in diverse ways. So the bigger question now would be, why are they difficult? So you as a leader get why they are difficult in that particular case, because it could be different other things that could speak into why they are difficult. Dr. Amina touched on emotional intelligence, for example. Sometimes it could be something that they are going through in their personal lives, and people fail to manage that themselves, and so they'll throw it at you in an environment as an opportunity for them to vent. So you are not now supposed to fight their using your emotions as well. You'd never get to the finish line. The interesting thing about it is leadership actually does tell that you will constantly meet difficult people. So your experience rather in dealing or solving the previous challenge actually is a springboard for you to know that, okay, even this next one, I'll be able to conquer it. The truth is that they'll be diverse. Others could be emotional. Others could be a case of frustrations. It could be something that they just need to, deal with. Others could be growth gaps. So you ought to do a diagnosis for you to find a perfect fit for the kind of solution you provide in that. The long and short of it all is we will face difficult people. Some will not just like us. They'll just be postured that way. They just don't like you. So you have to find a way of working with them in an environment where they've chosen not to like you. Yeah.
Well, amazing, amazing, amazing. I have learned so much from both of you here today. And I think our audiences from around the world have learned something from you guys as well. So in closing, I know we're a little bit over our time, but just in closing, what are the top 3 pieces of advice that you will give to our audience as we close in terms of their developing personal leadership and how they can use that to grow their leadership capacity in their professional life? We can start with Curtis. What are your top 3 pieces of advice?
Number one, I would say they are in no particular order, by the way. But the first one I would say is, first of all, accept yourself. There's a sense in which a number of people get to a point because of their experiences or the stuff that they've gone through. They take themselves into a corner and just be and conclude that for them, probably life was designed to be that way. But trust the positive things that can happen in life. Just trust that probably something can work one day. Trust that you are a candidate of the better life as well. Just trust. It might not make sense, but just trust. Number 2, ask yourself why you are here. So the question of why basically is helping you to deal with the specific things or your specific assignment, if I were to put it that way. The question is, what problem did you come to solve? Why are you here? What are you trying to fulfill? Do you know what specific things were wired for? And then finally, just be kind. Generosity is one of the amazing things that you can ever experience. I've seen it with a certain class of people who practice it religiously. They believe actually that is one of the biggest contributors to why most Jews are rich. Like they are so generous. I say so because the world is going through so much, as it were. So we cannot afford to create so much pain when we could actually give out a smile. We can give out, whatever it is, any forms of kind, whatever form it comes. It doesn't need to be money. It could just be you being kind to people, polite, creating an environment for the people that are around us. I think those 3 things to me get to stand out.
Awesome. Amina, close this out. Top 3.
I like the why, because I was gonna go with that one as well. But I was, you know, because that is the, I think that's the ultimate. Why are you doing what you're doing? So that's so my three would be, again as well, not in any particular order, is start now. Start from where you are right now. What is it that you want to do? Where do you want to do it? And start now. There'll never be a time when you're when all your ducks are in a row. There'll never be a time when you're ready, because as I said before, you have to start to be great. You know, if you don't start today, next year you will be at the same place where you are, and you still haven't not moved. Secondly, ask for help. Look around for people in your space. Go onto LinkedIn, read people's profiles, reach out to them, ask for help for whatever it is that you want to do. I do get you know, DMs that come in and somebody wants money and things like that. The first question I'm asking is, how did you find me? How did you get to me? By what I mean in terms of asking for help is, you can't do this on your own. You can only go so far to be able to develop if you're on your own. But if you're working with other people, you're more likely to go further. Number three is be kind to yourself. So Curtis talked about kindness to others, but usually we forget about kindness to ourselves. So things will go wrong, things will not work as you want. What it is that's going to get you up in the morning and say, let me try again. It's about forgiving yourself, not beating yourself up too much if something doesn't go how you wanted it to go, and then keep pushing. So those are my three.
Oh my goodness. Okay, y'all. Yes, absolutely. Y'all have just given us so much meat to chew on, and I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Thank you to our audiences for being as lively and as conversational in our chat as you have been. The questions were great. If you're watching us later, thank you for still tuning in and watching us later. A big thank you to Dr. Amina and Sir Curtis for being here with us today in our discussion on personal leadership and how you can use that to grow your professional career trajectory. So as all of you guys know, we have these fireside chats once a month. Our next one is December 23rd, just before Christmas. And I'm so excited about our speakers for December as well. Well, I'm naturally an excitable person because everyone says, Mercy, you say you're excited every month. Yeah, every month I'm excited because sharing knowledge and helping other people grow and find resources to make themselves better, achieve purpose, and really just become who God created them to be is something that really brings me a lot of joy. So thank you so much for being here. Until the next time, we'll see you guys in December. Follow us on our social media pages. Follow Amina, follow Curtis, and learn from them as they continue to share their wisdom and experiences on their platforms as well. So thank you everyone for being here, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much for having me, Mercy. And thank you everyone for giving up your time this weekend to listen to what we have to say. And as Mercy said, please reach out on LinkedIn or any other socials. Yeah. Looking forward to listening to December. I think I'll be in the audience in December now. I'm excited.
Awesomeness. Thank you, everyone.